Thank you very much for this invitation. Very pleased to be here. Thank you for the invitation to join you for the launch of the Arab model for quality and excellence in education. And congratulations to the UNESCO Regional Center for Quality and Excellence in Education for having coordinated the process. So I'm very pleased to share with you some thoughts on foresight and the quality of education systems. And these are based on experience at UNESCO and leading the work on the futures of education in particular. So let me start by perhaps asking why foresight and why now? Um, And the starting point for that is really to say that we are at a time of deep uncertainty, growing volatility. As we know, there is accelerated technological change that is affecting all aspects of our lives. The climate crisis is worsening as well as its implications. Just look at the heat waves that have been hitting Europe in the last month or so. We have prolonged, protracted violent conflicts with apparently growing disregard for international humanitarian law. We have shifting economies, largely because of AI and automation. And these are reshaping what education systems must prepare students, educators, schools, and communities to navigate. It's this uncertainty and this volatility. We also know that the development realities across the Arab world are very diverse, and therefore approaches to quality and relevance in education are also from very different points of views. Countries across the region have very different access to resources. They have their different specific histories, development priorities, and their vulnerabilities and strengths. Yet all the countries in the region continue to hold great hopes and aspirations for education. And education is inherently future-looking. It is a means of building resilience and capacity. Um, it's a means of transmitting, but also creating knowledge and capabilities across generations. So by definition, education is future and forward-looking. Um, but as we know, and in the Arab region, we perhaps know this better than most, the future is not easily predicted, and projections on what the future may look like can change very, very suddenly. So education systems play an essential role in unlocking this potential for adaptation, this potential for resilience, for developing agency, for reimagining, the capacity to shape development directions and to shape the future. And this is key to our understanding of educational quality. So education quality is an urgent question for foresight. Um, and it's an urgent question because while student enrollment and literacy are at an all-time high in the region, enrollment levels have risen at all levels of education. We know, though, that there has been a dramatic challenge in terms of quality and learning. A large portion of 10-year-olds still struggle to read a simple text. Quality varies drastically by geography and economic status. We know that many of the countries in the region that participate in cross-national large-scale assessments, such as PISA or TIMSS, have low rankings. And we see in a number of countries that the average levels of competency in language and math in science are declining, have been declining over the past few years. So there are major issues with quality, with completion, which continues to be a concern, and there are major gaps. And there is, of course, the question of employment and youth unemployment, which are at record highs in the region. So foresight can help us to reimagine these futures, in particular in a region where the population is so young. The Arab region has perhaps the largest share of young people in the world. 60% of the population is under 30. It is, in the history of the region, the most educated generation in its history. And young people within the region are driving much of the social, cultural, and technological transformations we are seeing. These young people in the region are shaping the future. But as these disparities, as in quality of education also coincide with high unemployment rates, it's also leading many of the young people in the region to either leave the region or to fail to meet their true and full potential and talent. And so really, foresight is an urgent question. The quality of education is an urgent question for foresight, because foresight can help us reimagine this picture. And the Arab model for quality education and excellence reiterates the importance, and we see the quote here on the slide, reiterates the importance of investment in education, but it might need to reimagine how we invest in education, as some gaps narrow while other gaps widen. Now, what is encouraging is to see the focus on foresight in the Arab model for quality education. There's a very clear place given to foresight and to forward-looking vision. It's a very prominent position. I note that 15% of the model's total score actually relates to domain 1, which is about foresight and forward-looking vision, and that this comes actually ahead of issues related to governance and performance. Now, this domain of forward-looking vision and foresight includes three strands, as we have seen: future directions and strategic planning. This involves analysis of both the factors, external and internal, to education systems. Second, co-building and leading change planning, which involves ensuring the participation of all stakeholders in determining future directions of education, and to do this through a participatory and integrated approach. And third, we see the third strand on school-based development planning, which I would expect sees foresight and planning translated into practice. Now, this domain of forward-looking vision gives a great deal of attention to the role of planning, strategic planning, change planning, development planning. It's emphasizing really the quality monitoring and evaluation systems, and it draws a clear roadmap between planning, implementation, evaluation, continuous improvement, and results. Having said that, in a world of ever-changing realities, both within the education system and the world around us, and we're seeing it with artificial intelligence today, we are no longer certain that conventional planning methods and approaches are enough on their own. And this is where I suggest that in the implementation of our model, we can lean further into foresight and futures thinking, which at UNESCO we consider to be a capability, a capacity, even a culture and a mindset that encourages reimagining our futures together. So to do so, it would be useful to differentiate between planning and foresight. Planning and foresight are distinct yet complementary. And in terms of planning, the education community has gained over the decades lots of valuable experience with planning. It's a future-oriented orientation that effectively looks at trends and projections and maps backwards to inform today's decisions, plans, and allocation of resources. So we can look 10 years from now, for example, and ask, well, how many students will we expect to have? How many teachers will be required? What capacity do universities and teacher education programs require? We can even assess to some extent how labor markets are changing and where demand is rising for tertiary education and training programs. We could try to determine where the curricula would require updating and so on. So these questions of planning are essential for technical planning. Without it, education systems face teacher shortages, under-resourced schools, limited educational quality and excellence. But the major assumptions that underlie educational planning is that much of the future's broad contours are knowable, and that trends will largely continue in a linear fashion. So planning generally holds well when ensuring education systems in the short term. But planning techniques and approaches become less reliable when we're looking at a longer term horizon, because then we are faced with greater uncertainty and unexpected disruptions and change. Foresight and futures thinking, on the other hand, is a little different. Foresight and futures thinking in education benefits from suspending some of these assumptions of planning. Foresight requires listening, imagining specific moments in time through the eyes and words from different positions, from the point of view of different stakeholders. And to take an example of a foresight exercise, let's, for a moment, put ourselves in the shoes of a talented, enthusiastic young graduate who would hope to pursue a career in teaching. So a future teacher, a young, talented, motivated future teacher. Perhaps they are in Saudi Arabia, perhaps in a different country in the region or beyond. Imagine them today, starting their first day in front of a classroom. How are they thinking about their futures? What are their aspirations? Why were they even drawn into the profession? Now let's project ourselves 10 or 20 years into the future to 2036, 2046. Is this same teacher still teaching? Why or why not? And if they are still teaching, what has ensured that they are still enthusiastic, that they are continuous learners, that they are contributing, that they are flourishing as teachers? So as we ask such questions of the imagination, we are stretching our imagination. We get insights into the future and insights that can help us understand and reflects on and reflect for us to critically reflect on the factors, the opportunities, the challenges that could affect teacher excellence, teacher retention, and teacher attrition in the in the coming years. And we could do the same. We took the example of a teacher, but we could do the same for a student and put ourselves in the shoes of a student who is struggling with questions of what they are learning and their imagined futures of or in the shoes of education leaders who are eager to see that their schoolwork to see their schoolwork differently in the coming years. So by asking these kinds of foresight questions from the point of view of different actors, we get a sense of what are the possible factors that are shaping alternative futures. But this kind of imagination is only the beginning. We need to get out of our offices, out of our meeting rooms, and we need to spend a lot of time with those who are already seeing the seeds of change around them. We need to hear from many, many teachers, families, school leaders, students, researchers, professors who are seeing what the future's thinkers call signals of the future. By listening to them, we get a sense of what are these signals of possible futures in real time. So the Arab model for quality and excellence in education launched today provides many entry points for the kind of foresight that can open different avenues for educational change. But it doesn't guarantee that foresight will necessarily happen as it is implemented, and we need to remain attentive to questions and questions and the risk, I would say, of by default falling back on conventional planning methods and mechanisms alone. Will leadership, for example, will leadership and participation actually reach today's teachers and students? Or will it stop at the level of officials and experts who are consulting each other? If we really want to implement foresight, then we also need to engage intensively with those who are involved on the ground with changes that are actually happening. It's also important to note that there is no single starting point. And given how differently different countries in the regions are positioned, some are affected by war, by conflict, by instability. Some are highly resourced. We need to consider if implementation will leave enough room, implementation of the model, the Arab model for quality and excellence in education. We have to be wary that it leaves enough space, enough room for each to start from his very different starting point, rather than considering a linear formula. And finally, will we only consider benchmarking and target setting, or will we also be involved in reimagining, in signal gathering, in exploration, in questioning, and in imagining? So my hopes is that we will see this model invite many opportunities for everyone to be involved in foresight, in futures thinking, in what we have called at UNESCO reimagining the futures of education together. And in closing, I would like to just refer to this quote from the report of the International Commission on the Futures of Education that says, despite the uncertainty of foresight work, anticipating transformative shifts provides a foundation on which to plan and build alternative scenarios about how to better align education with humanity's needs in the decades to come and beyond. So again, I warmly welcome and congratulate everyone on what this model, the Arab model, represents, and in its commitment to ensuring education quality with a forward-looking vision. And I thank you very much. Congratulations and best wishes for this launch event. Thank you.